So, hello everyone, this is Arush Kumar, your host for today's EnTalks by ENspire', the annual entrepreneurship event by ECell IIIT Lucknow. It's an immense pleasure to welcome Mr. Kaustav Majumdar, advisor at Bengal Chamber of Commerce, here with us to guide us towards the path of entrepreneurship. He has helped young minds in dealing pressures and strengthening their overall thinking capabilities. Many huge companies for his advice and for his ability to think differently. Please welcome Mr. Kaustav Majumdar.
Thank you very much, Arush. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you who have logged in. It's a Saturday evening. I cannot imagine that you have nothing better to do, but I'm grateful that you guys are still here. Thank you, IIIT Lucknow, for having me over here. Thank you for a lovely introduction. I have about a little more than half an hour with you guys. I have a little deck that I need to share with you. I will be very, very glad if there are questions at the end. And one of my colleagues at IIIT Lucknow will take the questions towards the end of the session. Very briefly, my name is Kaustav Majumdar. I teach in a few institutions. I happen to be with a few organizations like Bengal Chamber of Commerce, with IIM Calcutta, the Corporate Innovation Park, and a couple of other institutions as an advisor. I also advise a few small companies and some not so small companies in the capacity of an advisor, mentor, or consultant. I'm immensely privileged that I work with a substantially large number of startups, young people who have set up businesses. Some of them have done very well. Some are still building their businesses. I've been doing this literally all my life. I enjoy doing this, and this has helped me travel to different parts of the world, made me meet different types of people. And that's what I try and bring to my class whenever I get opportunities to go and spend time in colleges, and also sessions such as this. With that, very briefly, the sessions, I'm going to rush through it. And then hold on to your questions and do ask me right at the end. Well, oh my God, COVID-19 is still here. I'm going to die. It's been an awful time for all of us, all over the country, all over the world, but India obviously suffered immensely in the last few months. I'm sure all of you, many of you, would have suffered, would have struggled, would have seen your near and dear ones struggle. I also believe many of you have uncertain bugs in your tummy right now. What's going to happen to me? How is the future going to unfold? I don't have answers in terms of how the future is going to unfold, but I'm going to try and share my perspective to you. You will see this slide later on again. In many ways, I've spent my entire life working with startups as well as people who are trying to build innovative and creative things. I love that world of uncertainty. I love that world of what may happen tomorrow. When I look at that world, I look at it in two perspectives. One is the present self, where we are currently, and the next bit is what do you think is going to be in the future, which obviously we do not know. And that uncertainty is something which fuels me. So this slide will come back again. And as an entrepreneur and somebody who works very closely with other entrepreneurs, every entrepreneur is really trying to build something for the future. All of us are really trying to build something for the future. It's a favorite slide of mine. I'm more of a dog person. I've had dogs most of my life, but cats, I find them intriguing. And I have a little bit of a cat slide. I have one more over here. They're always there in most of my presentations. I kind of like this slide. I picked it up from it was a meme in I think it came to me via WhatsApp. I love it. I love the way the slide has been sort of positioned. You start off as an intern. Many of you would be interning very shortly, or you might have already done it last year. The current interns are working on Zoom, which I don't know how that pans out. And then, sort of settle down into the organization and you keep climbing and you see how the cat's face changes. Becomes an assistant manager, becomes a manager, becomes a general manager. Look at that. And then eventually you become the school CEO. Most of corporate world has operated like this for half a century. A large number of us who are educators, who spend a lot of our time trying to help people such as you build your how your future will pan out. At times, I think we pretend to know how the future will look like. So what might have happened in the last 50 years may not happen in the next 50 years. In fact, most likely will not happen in the next 50 years. In fact, I'm pretty sure it won't be happening in the next 5 years. And in many ways, the next 15, 20, 25 minutes is about that. Before we get going, we talk about anything else. First things first, COVID-19 has happened. It is the big elephant in the room. We cannot deny it. It has impacted every single one of us. What is scary is not COVID-19 now anymore. It's scary is how long it'll last, how long it'll carry on, and how it is going to impact our lives going forward. How will it change everything around us? I mean, if there's a third wave, what if there's a fourth and a fifth wave? What if we are stuck in our houses for another 2 years? What will happen? So let's get scared a little bit more. I don't know how these numbers can be validated. Apparently 500 million jobs lost. I was Googling it a little while back. Some people told me a billion jobs were lost. I don't know. Bottom line, a lot of people lost their jobs. 1 crore plus jobs were lost apparently in India in the second wave. I'm again not sure whether this number is correct. Bottom line, a lot of people suffered. The third line is possibly correct. 97% of households in our country, income in those households were severely dented. All industries have been hit. I spend a lot of my time, for example, with the hospitality and travel and tourism industry. I know tons of little companies that I have tried to support over the last few years. They are in dire straits. Obviously, nobody's traveling. Well, bottom line is, again, life we know as we knew in 2018 and 19 is not going to be the way we thought in 2021. It will possibly go back to 19. Now in 2021, we are beginning to see that it has changed, and it's possibly changed for good. Now, what do? Shall we get scared? Shall we get further scared than what we already are? And do what? Be paralyzed with fear? Give up, crawl in a corner, wait for the inevitable to happen, or for things to automatically get better? No. I cannot be that person who would not do anything and just sort of crawl up and wait for things to improve. Sure, we need to wait for things to improve, but then while we are waiting for things to improve, what are you doing to perhaps get back some part of the control that we seem to have lost in our lives? I told you I use a number of cat slides. Well, sorry about this. I know it's a very serious event, but I like this. So what are you doing? Are you just sitting in one corner of the room and doing nothing? Or are you planning to do something to take charge of your life? So I refuse to be cowered down. I refuse to be paralyzed. I refuse to be helpless. And I refuse to wait. I accept things are bad, things won't be easy, things will not be like this before. I accept 2011, where many of you were very, very young back then, but I'm sure all of you would remember. We lifted the cup. I'm sure it's going to come back. I was very sure we're going to get an ICC trophy. That did not happen. But I know things will get better, can only get better. I am hopeful that the younger lot, the younger generation, people such as you, is going to take us to perhaps a better tomorrow. I'm not sure, again, there's another meme that was floating on the internet. I'm not sure whether this actually means this. I don't read Chinese dialect well. But apparently crisis is spelled, and there are two syllables, and one is danger and the other is opportunity. Of course, it's a bit ironic in light of what has happened that we would use a Chinese phrase, if at all this is a bona fide. But I like the context, the concept behind this particular slide. With every danger comes an opportunity. And in many ways, that is the saransh, the one word sort of summary of what we're talking about today. For every little challenge, there's an opportunity. Interestingly, this was a business that was tried somewhere in the States. I don't know who was the guy. I read about it and I found it very funny. Kids keep crawling all over their houses. Somebody thought if we can make them into a mop, and they would possibly clean the house while they're crawling over. Now, that was ludicrous. It was obviously, I found it very funny. My wife did not think it was all that funny. But I found it very cute and very funny. Not all great ideas turn into great businesses, but that does not mean we'll stop thinking. We'll stop seeing opportunities when we have challenges around us. Some course changes that have become sort of apparent now in our lives. Well, adaptation is now critical for survival. It always was. But when you sort of get into a complacent stage, you kind of do the same thing again and again, and you expect life to be as you plan it to be. Right? In many ways, if you study macroeconomics, you don't really look into the minor little details that's happening in our everyday life. You look at it from sort of an eagle's view, and you see life's been more or less constant. And then came a COVID year, or COVID 2 years, and everything changed around us. But prima facie, a popular area of interest, at least I have, I've spent a lot of my life, on the borders of education. Education, for example, hasn't really changed much in the last 150 to 100 years. Sure, there has been a lot of talk and some changes that people have been trying to experiment with in the last X number of years. But let's look at management education. I believe some of you are MBA students. In many ways, business hasn't changed till the internet came. And even when the internet came, business changed, but it changed at an appreciable sort of way where we could figure out, But then look at the way business has now got changed in the last, say, 5-7 years, not just internet. Your handheld devices came, and very high-speed internet came. And now, when you're unable to go out of the house, the whole concept of digitization has completely changed the way we look at business. You have to adapt. It's the only way you can survive. Survival, we always knew, of the fittest is important. Darwin said that to us. It's also quickest. It's also necessary that you not only survive, but you survive quickly. It's not just a question. And I think fittest and quickest go together. The third is of maximum relevance to me, high resurgence of entrepreneurship. Now, all of a sudden, it may be forced entrepreneurship. The gig economy, those of you who are familiar with the expression, you will appreciate the gig economy is here to stay. Only a few years back, somebody used to work with me with one of my outfits that I'm associated with, 23, 24-year-old young boy. I was in London at that point in time. I had come down to India to see my family, and this gentleman wanted to have a cup of coffee with me, and I met him. And he had left working for us, and he had formed a little company with his friend. They were making some plugins for some website-based businesses. He used to work in a software company that I am associated with. And he had a remarkable run, and he made a couple of crores turnover, just the two of them, in a span of a year and a half. Now, that is the future. The future is that slowly but surely, you will have some companies which will become massive in size, but most organizations will become small or smaller, maybe even a single person company, and equally powerful and potent. And that is the new thing. Every little opportunity. There's no need for people, and increasingly I'm finding young people telling me that job security is important, but which job really gives me security? I might as well look after my own future and my own career. Entrepreneurship. The definition of entrepreneurship is now changing. People are no longer saying, I'll give you an example. Many of you have played Candy Crush. Candy Crush, the game, I believe, comes from a company called theking.com. I think so. Well, Candy Crush was more than $1 billion worth a video game. That company did not really get the same kind of success after Candy Crush. Now, does that make them an unsuccessful company? They made more than $1 billion selling one game, an extremely annoying game, if I can also add. The whole world was playing that. the whole concept of business has changed. It's no longer that I will have to run a business for 50 years. Maybe I'll run a business for 5 years. It's no longer I'll run a business which will have 5,000 people. Maybe I will only have 5% or nobody. The whole concept of business, tenure, amount of money, it's not necessary that I'll have to run a business which will have 100 crore turnover. Maybe it will have sufficient money which will make me happy. The world as we are seeing it, vis-a-vis the world that we're going to get into tomorrow. I'm going to rush through a couple of quick things. Entrepreneurship is not a fad anymore. Some people are saying that almost 40% of adult America is either directly or indirectly self-employed. The bottom line is, again, gig economy is here to stay. Sure, most startups will die, will continue to die, but that does not mean people will stop trying to build businesses. One thing is for sure, the entrepreneurial journey is lonely, but it was possibly so earlier when there were not enough sufficiently large number of entrepreneurs. I hail from a middle-class Bengali family. In my family, when I wanted to become an entrepreneur, I could not find anybody to sort of get inspired by. It wasn't the thing to do in the 90s, which is when I finished my engineering. It was not, it was not a normal thing for people to do. It's so normal now. So much so, it's possibly overtly romanticized right now. But it's good. I like more and more young people saying that I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to try this. They're saying that by 2025, possibly 1 in 5 of you guys are going to be entrepreneurs. Ask yourself, if you're not the person, possibly one of your friends will become an entrepreneur. There's a fair chance by 2030, many of you, maybe 2 in 5, will become entrepreneurs. Now, very quickly, who are we? While you listen to me, you may want to read this. I found this very, very interesting. Entrepreneurs are very weird people, right? Entrepreneurs are people who see opportunities when others only see problems. Right? During recession, people are busy feeling sorry for themselves for very good reasons. Entrepreneurs would look at it as an opportunity, and they'll possibly figure out how they can make something out of the tough times that they're going through. So entrepreneurs are terribly unreasonable people. They seem to see opportunities when most see problems. Now, what are they? They're people like you and me. I'm hoping there are more and more amidst you. They may be extroverted. A big belief is that entrepreneurs are extroverted people. I am not necessarily, I don't necessarily agree. Many of you could be introverted and could make outstanding entrepreneurs. They may be great communicators. Communication helps, or not. They will have all the standard do's and don'ts that every other person has. Well, couple of things that I've seen: the successful entrepreneurs will be disciplined. They will have high people quotient, high social and emotional awareness, and they will be confident. Not necessarily narcissistic, but their confidence will possibly grow with time. The future, as we know, it has changed. We did not notice it. It's changing further and will change completely. I'm hoping some of you at the end of this session or later on, if we ever get an opportunity to talk, we'll discuss more on this particular slide. How is the future changing? Is it really changing around us? So what are the most likely qualities of an entrepreneur? I'm going to rush through this, and I'm hoping that some of you will quickly go through this and read this. To me, people ask me at times, what do you think? I mean, I have had the opportunity of seeing very many entrepreneurs, some quite outstanding individuals. One thing that I have seen as a common thread amongst all of them, or most of them, is that they can all learn very quickly and almost at will. If they need to learn something, they will go ahead and learn it. I mean, that bit of self-motivation, I think, is quite astonishing. And I want you to ask yourself, are you that person? They're usually highly resilient. They don't give up very easily. They're not particularly bothered about risk and uncertainty beyond a point. Of course, everybody is worried about risk beyond a point. But at the same time, they're not somebody who will freak out if they have to do something which is, strange. Like, for example, are you the person who can pack your bags, get out of the house, and then figure out where to go? or do you need to plan everything from? I mean, I'm not saying that an entrepreneur has to do something ridiculous all the time, but I'm saying, are you able to do that? You just go somewhere and then figure out what you're going to do. Entrepreneurs do make tons of plans, but they're also somebody who are not worried about stepping into the unknown. Entrepreneurs, I believe, are generalists, not necessarily specialists all the time. They're deeply passionate, self-motivated. And they have this tremendous bias for putting the customer at the center of all experience. They want to ensure that if they're serving somebody, that person needs to have a great time. That person needs to benefit. And perhaps the most important thing, they can embrace failures. Our world, our society, including our education system, has stigmatized failure so much that entrepreneurship becomes a taboo word. Why? Because most entrepreneurs tend to fail. But what is the definition of failure? What do you mean by a failure? I mean, how do we know somebody has succeeded or failed, even in the corporate world? And that's a problem, right? We have put these little ladders in front of us and little sort of, crowns that we want to wear. I mean, if you have not made a certain amount of money, does that make you a failure? I'm not so sure. So I think we need to change the concept of failure. Because if you do not know how to fall down while you're riding a bicycle for the first time, you will never be able to ride it. And if that is true, it's true for every aspect in our life. And that's a problem. That's a societal problem that we have. Entrepreneurs are people who can embrace failures. They can say, you know what, okay, things went south, koi baat nahi, I'll still get up, I'm still going to take care of, I'm going to figure out a way, I'm going to try and fight it out. Society may not be very forgiving all the time, but are you that person who can do that to yourself? I work for a few institutions, and this slide is not really necessarily for all my student friends over here. It's possibly for people who work in institutions, in case they are here in this session. Some people ask me, how do we do this? I mean, like, do we help them build businesses? I said, no. And this is something that I've learned from my seniors. It's not about building businesses. It's about building an entrepreneurial spirit. And that's important. Entrepreneurial spirit would mean that I would be able to embrace failures, etc. I would be able to learn at will. It's about getting clarity and focus, understanding that we need to see the big picture and the little things. The devil is in the detail, as they say. We need to see the little things, but at the same time, we need to have the big picture in our mind. We need to understand tomorrow's technology. We need to understand how the human mind works. We need to help people build connections, networks, and we need to hope and encourage. This one slide, I thought I would just quickly put it in for all my other professor friends if they are here on the call. What looks promising going forward? I don't think we will have a lot of time to go through each one of them. It's evident that the digital world is now here to stay. We've been skirting with the digital world for a long time. That world seems to be well and truly entrenched because we have spent so much time digitally. And I think I find that I don't want to be sad about it. I think mankind has continuously evolved. We've figured out newer ways of doing things, and at times we leave behind some of the older ways. So the digital world would mean that we may not go and watch movies as often as we did earlier. It seems evident and apparent. It also means that a lot of our engagement online is going to be necessary. So if you're working in Mumbai, for example, you don't want to travel 2 + 2, 4 hours every day to get to work. And do you really need to do that? Unless you work in a factory where you have to use large machines, etc. Do you really need to do that? Do you really need to? Do we really do all that when we're saying we're working or we're pretending to work? So I think tomorrow we will have people going to offices once a week, or maybe twice a week, and that should be sufficient because the social aspect is necessary. We may actually value those social interactions a lot more. Those of you who have been locked for the last few months, and you have the opportunity on going and seeing your friend for a cup of coffee, that little meeting now carries so much more value than before because you don't get to do that all that much. Maybe it's a good thing. So it seems evident to me that some businesses will tend to do better than many other businesses. A very crucial slide. I'm trying to post a few potential sort of questions, either for us to discuss today, or more importantly, far more importantly, for you to reflect on later on, introspect. These are the questions that I think about a lot. What do you think you will do when you're 50? For me, it's an easier thing to plan because 50 is just around the corner for me. For you, 50 seems to be very far away, right? May not be so. I vividly remember the time when I was in engineering, first year or second year. I feel it's just the other way, just a couple of years back. So time is just going to fly by. Now, what do you think you will do when you're 50? Well, if you think what you will do will look like the way your father led his life or your mother led her life, it's not going to be the same. It's impossible because the world has changed so dramatically in the last 20, 30 years. It freaks people out. When I did my engineering, I was a computer science engineer. I remember I was amongst the, in my community, etc., my friend circle, I was one of the few who had an email. But, it was so precious to have an email. I was so proud of the fact that I had an email. I don't know why I was so proud. But I could not send emails to anybody. My girlfriend, who was to live in a different country, I could not send emails to her because she did not have email. And that's only like, 30 odd years back, not even 30. Actually, not even 30, it's about 25, 26 years back. And it freaks me out. And then the world kind of completely whizzed by us. In my first job, they gave me a pager. Most of you have no clue what a pager is. It's a little device where, text used to come. And I was so proud as to wear the pager in front, just underneath my tummy so that people would see it. And we know, Kaustav has a pager. It's ridiculous. How stupid is it? How vain? But it felt awesome. And then came mobile phones. I remember companies in the early 2000s used to say, if you join our company, we'll give you a mobile phone. That's only 20 years back. Even then, the pace of change was slow. That pace of change has become maddening, frenetic now. Imagine 5G coming in, you downloading an entire movie in less than a few seconds. That's tomorrow. Augmented reality is going to be commonplace. All your phones, you don't have to use an Apple 22 or whatever, a Samsung Galaxy expensive 1 lakh rupee ka phone. Your everyday phone, the 10,000 rupees phone will be able to handle augmented reality. Technology is going to make sure everything's going to change around you. It's interesting to think when you're possibly 22 now, what will you do 28 years from now? That takes me to a bigger point. What will the world look like at 2050? They say that we will have flying cars in 2030. 2050, can you imagine? Where is Skynet happening? Those of you who have seen Terminator, that's when the technology world and artificial intelligence, etc., will take over. I don't know, maybe not. Will everything change around us? Will education change? That hasn't seemed to have changed in the last 200 years. I think education will finally change, courtesy COVID. Will we be like our parents, grandparents in the future? I hope we carry some of their values and their thoughts and their whatever we have learned from them. But the fact of the matter is, every generation is different and every generation is smarter. Jim Flynn, somebody I have great respect for, says and empirically proved that every generation is smarter than the generation before. So you guys are almost a different generation from me, are smarter than me. I mean, empirically speaking. So you won't be like your parents and grandparents. You will be smarter than them. And you will do new things which your parents and grandparents could not even think of. Will we live till 100 years or more? Well, little girls born in United Kingdom in the last 5 years, I think they have an 80% chance or 70% chance of living till 104 as life expectancy. So most likely your children, most likely many of you will live till 100. There's a possibility if you take care of your life, if you take care of your health. Your children, extreme chances will live till 100. Do you realize what that means? You may not retire at 60. What will you do for 40 years? The world around you is going to change dramatically. Keep saying that. What will happen to big institutions, corporations, central banks, governments? I mean, Peter Thiel, the original founder of PayPal, says that cryptocurrency and bitcoins, etc., will completely change the way the world is going to look. And Warren Buffett does not agree. But I mean, I can't say that it is going to remain exactly like the way it was 100 years back. I think it can change. I think cryptocurrency is here to stay. If cryptocurrency is here to stay, what will happen to central banks? If central banks are not around, what will happen to governments? God knows. I do not know. It's fascinating, though. Will we become slaves of our own desires, devices? Well, that's a song from Hotel California. Lyrics is similar. And finally, what do you think will happen? I've come back. We went to 2050. I've come back. What will you do in 2025, in 2030? It's up to you to figure out what's going to happen in the world in 2025 and 2030. It's not up to your college, really. It's not up to the university. It's not up to the government. It's up to you. You should think where the world is going and how you're preparing yourself. This course that you're in is one of the stepping stones. It's your life. You have to take charge. Are you traveling alone? What's going to be a team like? Well, you need not be alone. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It is a team effort. Choose your friends carefully. Choose your travelers carefully. You know, they say the journey is more important than the destination. It's true. And I think companionship in that journey is even more important. And as I finish, what's at the center of all of this conversation? Well, in my mind, you know, life's a mess. It's like a jungle. There are way too many things happening. There's too much to look out for. It's too much pressure. With everything that is happening around you, with everyone around. Life seems to be one big problem. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, life's actually a question of choices. The choices that you will make going forward. Mary Kay, a famous entrepreneur, started a huge cosmetics brand. Said something very interesting. Most people live and die with the music still unplayed because they never dare to try. If you feel that there are wishes in the back of your head, ideas, great things that you possibly can do, maybe you should do them. So don't wait for validation. Don't wait for your professor to say, oh my God, what a cool idea. It's your life. That's just a silly slide. All of these companies started during recessions. We are going through one now. This is a very interesting slide. Between 1955 to 2017, only these 60 companies have remained in the Fortune 500 list. 440 seem to have fallen away, so there are new 440 that have come up. If you Google a little bit further, you will also find out how many companies have gone bust. The purpose of telling you this is everything's changing around us, including the big boys. Xerox does not exist. Kodak does not exist. Pepsi is buying prime real estate all over the world to open restaurants. The world's changing. ITC has gone into foods and software because people don't want to smoke cigarettes like the way they used to earlier. Everything's changing around us. Present self versus the future self. You are where you are now. Where do you think you're going to go tomorrow? I'm hoping some of you would become entrepreneurs. Should you want to become one? Should you care about becoming one? Even if you're unsure, and even if you choose not to become one, but you want to still figure out what is entrepreneurial spirit, I hope you spend some time thinking about it. And I hope you will get in touch with me or others like me, not necessarily because we know how to become an entrepreneur better, just to find out what are the mistakes I made in my life so that you don't make them. I don't want you to have wisdom when you're 47 like me. You should have it at 22. You're not alone. I want you to remember, the strength of a man's character, as they say, is not how fast you run, or if you're a boxer, how strong you are with your right jab or your left uppercut. It's all about how you get up. That's resilience. This COVID year has been tough for all of us, or maybe we are extremely fortunate. You and I are extremely fortunate. I am fortunate because I had COVID a couple of months back, and it was not a very nice experience. But in light of all the suffering that I saw people have had in around me, I consider myself to be immensely fortunate and blessed. It's a once in 100-year sort of a thing. And we know the world's going to certainly change after this. It's an opportunity. Nietzsche, the famous German philosopher, says, what does not kill you makes you stronger. Keeping that in mind, the strength of a man's character or a woman's character is how you get up after the punch from the floor, how you get up. I will leave with this one question in your mind, how you will make use of today. By flying a plane, by smiling for a selfie, is something coming at you at a breakneck speed. That's me, Kaustav Majumdar. Please find me on social media. Please get in touch with me. I'd love to meet you guys. I'd love to talk to you guys. And I wish you all the very best going forward. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So there are a few questions. So the first one is, due to COVID, a lot of new opportunities has been created in education sector, etc. So do you think they are sustainable in a long run?
A lot of new opportunities, you said. Is that what you said?
Yeah, kind of. Like in education sector, a lot of online education platform has been opened. So
Okay.
just like in the slide you mentioned, only 60 companies were in Fortune 500. So how many of you think that will sustain in the future?
Okay, so first and foremost, there are two parts to it. I think it's a good question, but two, three parts to this. One is, I think tomorrow's businesses and tomorrow's youth, even if not right now, very soon you will start realizing it is not necessary to think in the long run. It's not necessary. That's the way I used to think when I was your age, or my father used to think when my father was your age, which is quite some time back. Long run ka matlab badal gaya hai, because life is changing so dramatically, so quickly. You don't have to make plans for 10 year, 20 year. Nowadays, business plans are not looking at a 7-year, 10-year break even. They look at a 6 months, 1 year, 2 year break even. So it's not necessary for us to make long-term plans. I think we're going to move from one gig to the other. So we're going to make a business plan, we're going to reap the benefits for a couple of years, and we will do something else. I find it hard to believe that you, Arush, or any of your friends would do the same type of job for the next 40 years. Can you believe that? Do you think you will do that? Do you think you will work in the same organization for 40 years? Most likely not. That's the way the earlier world used to happen. Now, going back to the digital opportunities that seem to have cropped up in recent times, I think EdTech education has greatly finally changed, and I think education is now finally going to accept digitization. I'm not a big fan, for example, of Zoom and Google Meet. I would have loved to see you in person. I would have loved to be amidst all of you and had this conversation, because that physical connect cannot be replaced. But look at the opportunity as well. I don't know which part of the country you are in right now. I know IIIT Lucknow is in Lucknow. I'm sitting in Calcutta. These are also the opportunities that digitization has finally brought to us. Last year, I got the opportunity to take a class with students in Portugal and Spain. Now, I have traveled different parts of the world. One can go to Portugal and Spain, but can I really go and take a 1-hour lecture somewhere? No, it's not worthwhile. But through Zoom, I could, or Google Meet, I can. So I think with opportunities digitization brings to us, whether the companies that have started right now, whether they will be sustainable 5 years from now, I don't know. Is it necessary to sustain for 5-10 years? Perhaps not. But the change is certain, and you will see more and more edtech companies that will come out, because education is bound to change. I hope that answers gentleman's question. Anything else?
Yeah. So the second question is like, what do you think about the environmental changes? How can it in next few years or next 10 years of the country or the world?
What a fabulous question. These are the kind of questions which make me become very hopeful. The earlier generation really did not care about environment. I think it's people like you that care about it. And that, you care about environment, you care about society, you care about equity, you care about equality. And this fills my heart with hope. Environment is a serious concern which most traditional corporations do not understand or chooses not to understand. And I think this will be one big difference. Environment and societal aspects will be differences what people like you will choose. You may even choose jobs tomorrow. You may not want to work, for example, for a company which pollutes too much. Environment is a serious concern. Recently, they said that the way every time there's a recession, there is the economy falls, and then there is a U or a V shape growth that takes place, which means there will be a tremendous push, which means large corporations will do wonderful things again to push the economy back on track, which means we will fill up the environment with more pollutants. And we know that if we continue to have global warming more than 2 degrees Celsius every year, ideally it should have been 1.5, it can be unchangeable. It can have global catastrophe. And they're saying because of COVID, the large push of large corporations may push our world to heat up by 3 degrees, not 2. Now that, for those of you who are obviously interested in environment, some of you I know are, is of tremendous problematic. I mean, it may make the world very different, say, not even 20, 30, 40 years back. It may make the world very different 5 to 10 years from now. I live in a part of the country where groundwater is very poor. Right? We have arsenic poisoning in eastern part of the country. People who live in Gujarat, Rajasthan, they struggle with water, with the water table over there. So you have all kinds of problems. Now, with all these problems are also opportunities. And I think as the governments have certainly tried, they have realized that they need to do something about it. Corporations, I think some corporations are mindful about it, but a large number of organizations don't really care. So they need to be regulated. And as they will be regulated, I think it will throw new opportunities for young people such as you. Electric vehicles are going to become more and more important as we understand. I think another 10 years from now, you will rarely be able to buy a diesel car. 15 certainly, right? You will, as electric vehicles come down, this is only a matter of time, you'll have more solar panels. So I think environment will throw very interesting business propositions for all of us.
Thank you, sir. It was quite an insightful session. I hope we could meet in person because I want to ask more about environment and how it can change the world. Thank you for having you here. And yeah.
I hope to be in Lucknow as soon as I'm able to travel again. It's one of my favorite cities. I have strong connections with your beautiful city, and I hope to be. And I've actually had the opportunity of going to your institution last time I was there. I hope to be in person over there and spend some time with all of you and all of your friends. I wish you all the very best. God bless all of you. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
गए सर
गए
लाइव बंद नहीं सर रुको बंद हो रहा अभी.
So this was all for today's EnTalk, and we will you can subscribe the channel and like the video if you want. Plus you can participate in the business quiz which is going on. You can come to the movie night in the night. And chill, guys. Bye.